Hello, this is David Goyette with National University Virtual High School. We're going over Unit 4. We're going over the assignments in Unit 4, Assignment 1 and Assignment 3. This is to assist Emily and some other students who've asked for assistance in the course with regard to some of the assignments, just to get some background, additional background outside of the text. We'll also be looking at the midterm, what you can expect to find in the midterm, and what those questions will look like. Let's begin by looking at Assignment 3 in Unit 4. Sorry, Assignment 1 in Unit 4. I'm going to turn over to that now. Let's see here. Make sure I got the right one. Here we go. Okay, so you're asked to answer several questions on the life of Theodore Roosevelt. If you're following along in your textbook, around page 653 or so, I'm going to turn to that now. And on 653, you will see from Roosevelt to Wilson and the age of progressivism, the Republicans split. Follow along on this page. And right away, the questions are going to focus in on that excerpt, that reading. So I'm going to take a look at the questions with you as we go along for Assignment 1. Again, this was in agreement with the sections I was going to cover as agreed to with Emily. So if I can just get the website, there we go. Republicans split, page 653. And then right away they ask you, how old was President Theodore Roosevelt when he left office, who succeeded him as President of the United States? Now, before we get right into the questions, you should recall that Theodore Roosevelt was one of the most interesting, one of the most dynamic, vivacious, bigger-than-life presidents we've ever had. Interesting president in the fact that he embodied many Republican principles that of his time and Republican principles of our time. He also was a progressive in many ways, a trust buster and big government when he wanted to be, pro-environment, but in a way that some would not see as pro-environment today. He was an avid hunter. But he did really love the environment as much as many hunters do, and he wanted to preserve it. Our current environmental movement would not recognize his thirst for capturing game as part of their movement, but he was a true lover of nature. He's one of the most preeminent birders of his time. He wrote, in fact, the best birder of his time. He wrote many novels. So he's a very prolific man, a man of many talents, a polymath, a person of many intellectual as well as physical talents, a lover of both the word and the deed. So let's get into Theodore Roosevelt. Questions. How old was ex-President Theodore Roosevelt when he left office? And let me go right into that section. So he was 50, and he succeeded, let's see, William Taft would succeed him. They ask you what's ironic about the fact that he's hunting in Africa and then he's termed a conservationist. Well, he ends up getting 9 lions, 5 elephants, 13 rhinoceroses, 7 hippopotamuses, and an assortment of other game. This is on page 653. This is going back to that paradox that we find in him, a man who wanted to preserve nature, but also dominate it at the same time. What was happening with Taft back home while he was over in Africa? Well, Taft was not working out as president. He was not following through with with the objectives that Roosevelt had left him. And since Roosevelt kind of handpicked him, he wasn't too happy with how things were going, and he was vexed to hear that Taft wasn't working out. The conservative progressive wings of the Republican Party began to split, and Taft often sided with the conservatives, which angered the progressives, among them the eventual bull moose here, Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt, they'll then ask you, let me go to the question here. They'll then be asked, although Roosevelt appeared to enjoy Europe, got that. Was the greeting for Roosevelt on his return to Europe an entirely grassroots movement by the people, or was it organized in some way? We notice that the text is explaining that that indeed it was an organized event. Roosevelt formed the Progressive Party in 1912 election, and the candidate for his election included Taft, Roosevelt Wilson, and Eugene V. Debs. His return to the U.S. was definitely organized. Even Roosevelt helped make the arrangements. And in 1912, the people who worried about the social and economic effects of urban industrial growth, these concerns led to a degree unusual in American politics. See page 654. So progressivism is defined by a set of characteristics. Now we'll get into this idea of progressivism. It's talked about today in our politics. If you're following the Republican debates, if you follow personalities on the news such as Rachel Maddow or Glenn Beck, you'll notice that progressivism comes up. Some find it as still a valuable political position and movement. Others find it as a threat to the United States. Where you lie as a student is up to you. I'm not here to sway you either way. I'm just here to give you perspectives and a background on history. So progressivism is defined as a set of characteristics that unite its followers. The first characteristic is that progressives act out of concern about the effects of industrialization and the conditions of industrial life. The second is a fundamental optimism about human nature and the possibilities of progress. Please look at page 654 for this. The third is a willingness to confidently intervene in people's lives. The fourth is a tendency to turn more and more to the authority of the state government. This is referred to by conservatives as the nanny state. It's referred to by progressives as being responsible. The fifth was to draw from a combination of evangelical Protestantism, and of course at this time the church was very much a part of the progressive movement, and the Protestant church in particular. The final characteristic was getting caught up in the progressive movement. Progressives truly believed in the goodness of human nature, and at this period were trying to improve things. Professions grew rapidly at this time, and progressivism led people to feel empowered and allowed them to pursue certain professions, such as doctors and lawyers. You saw more women going out for these positions. This empowerment led to the creation of a new social class that amassed their own wealth rather than having it inherited. This came into the topic of social justice. This is something that, if you again follow the discourse today, whether it be Sean Hannity, Rachel Maddow, Chris Matthews, pick an anchor person who has a position or has a platform. The subject of social justice, when it comes up, I can think of Glenn Beck seeing that as an evil, something that's anti-American, while as others remember that in our history it's very much a part of our American history. But social justice reformers noticed that workers drank away their wages. Some men spent more time in the saloon than at home. The Purity Crusade, and this goes into the failed attempt of teetotalers to do something called prohibition. And if you saw the Ken Burns documentary, you probably enjoyed it, or at least I did. Take a moment to watch that Ken Burns documentary. Well, more than a moment. You'll need, I think, at least 3 hours. But you don't have to watch it all in one sitting. It's a great bit of history, and Ken Burns always does a pretty good job if you have time to do that. The Purity Crusade was an effort to abolish the use of alcohol in public. It was part of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, temperance being this idea of staying sober. In the midst of World War I, they succeeded, and the 18th Amendment was added to the Constitution, prohibiting the manufacture, sale, and transportation of intoxicating liquors. Look for page 6 on 658 for that. Between the years of 1890 and 1914, women began organizing and fighting for equal rights, better pay, and of course the vote. Eventually, by 1920, women will gain the vote through the Suffrage Association. Women fought hard to get the 19th Amendment passed and achieved a much-deserved equality with men. Much of this as a result of progressivism. It says, why deny women a voice in public affairs when we give it for the asking every ignorant foreigner who comes to our shores? I believe that aside from the arguments regarding religion, this is the best point made for equality. Many solid arguments were later brought up regarding religion and morality. The 19th Amendment barely passed and was added to the Constitution. The 19th Amendment only passed after strong arguments and nationwide attention generated by many hardworking women of the era. And you can think of Lucretia Mott, you can think of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and others, and you'll research them in this chapter. So that's our first assignment. I did go through that quickly. Sorry if I went through some of the questions rapidly. Let's look at assignment 4, or sorry, unit 4, assignment 3, another one we agreed to review. Emily and I agreed to review. You're going to be asked about, let me go back to Roosevelt before I move on to World War I. So excuse me for stopping here. Just want to give you a quick picture of Roosevelt in the Sagamore Hill house. Theodore and Edith settled into a big house once known as Lee Home. It was called Sagamore Hill, named after the Abenaki Sagamore chief. I may be pronouncing the Native American tribe incorrectly, whose people once lived thereabouts. The grown-ups decided that 3-year-old Alice, despite her tears, would leave Aunt Bemmy and live instead with Theodore, Edith, and in 1887, baby Theodore Jr., a howling Polly Parrot. In his big sister's opinion, she and her father became better acquainted. He gave excellent piggyback rides, she discovered. Eventually, the Roosevelts filled Sagamore Hill with thousands of books and many a hunting trophy, pale tusks and antlers. The skins of polar bears, zebra, leopard, lion, and grizzly were rugs beneath their feet. Theodore proudly used a wastebasket made from an elephant's foot and dipped his pen in a rhinoceros foot inkwell. Nearly 20 calm-faced, glass-eyed animal heads, moose, musk ox, bison, and antelope, among others, loomed over the house full of 6 young Roosevelts, Alice, Ted, then Kermit in 1889, and Ethel in 1891, a jolly, naughty, wacky baby, quote unquote, said her father. Archibald, better known as Archie, was born in 1894, and in 1896, Quentin, the baby of the family, arrived. So Eleanor Roosevelt's being born around this time, October 11th, 1884. You have Grover Cleveland is elected 22nd president as he's building his family. Again, just a really fascinating man, whether you appreciate his presidency or not. Just one of the most interesting people to study in our history. All right, let me get right into World War I. Let me check the time before I do that. We are about, whoa, holy cow, 14 minutes. How did I do that? I can't use this.